Oh, lovely. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Hope everyone is well and safe. Thank you for the introduction. Yes, we at TWC have been doing consumer and retailer trends for the best part of 18 months now. We committed to doing two reasonably big surveys this year, one in April, one in autumn. And we established a number of consumer trends which we think are going to be relevant over the next couple of years. We've done a second study just in autumn, so we did the field work kind of the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th of November, and to update some of the trends which we picked up from earlier in the year. A couple of things to say that, yes, Colin commissioned us to boost that national UK-wide sample. So you'll see in a second, we spoke to about 1,000 people across the whole of the UK. And then in addition to that, just under 500, 481, 500 consumers in Scotland. So we really are able to see where there are commonalities or similarities, but also where there are some differences between the nations or the consumers in each nation. As you may have worked out for yourselves, there's been quite a bit of activity recently in the COVID world in the UK. And this research was done, as I say, between the 5th and the 8th of November. So sentiment was riding high and people were increasingly feeling very, very confident about the future. Obviously, things may have subsided ever so slightly in the last couple of weeks. So we're looking at how we can look at that going forward on a more regular basis. This is essentially the report, and it's always sometimes a little bit difficult to present a report. So what I've done is it's about 52 slides long. So it's not War and Peace, it's not too long. What I've just done is I've just selected about 15, 16 slides. So we've certainly done well before 10 o'clock, which hopefully will give you a kind of a flavour of what is in the report. Bear in mind, what I do share with you over the next half an hour or so is probably only about a third of what is in here. It's always a little bit difficult to work out which bits are going to be most interesting. I have focused on some kind of big trends. I've also focused on areas where I think the difference between Scotland and the rest of the UK is quite pronounced. But as I say, when we'll get the final report, we're just making last final tweaks now. Colin will get that this afternoon, and then either he or we will send it out to everybody this afternoon or tomorrow. So 24 hours max. So that is what we have done. Now, this is the kind of the title page, the contents page, but it is also there to identify the kind of the 5 main trends, four or 5 main trends, which we had picked up earlier in the year. And that was around increased confidence and going back out into hospitality businesses. There's a lot of talk about people, kind of the haves and have-nots. Many people have done reasonably well financially out of the last 2 years. There's unfortunately quite a few people who struggle, so we can look a little bit at that. Small format retail has done very, very, very well, certainly in the early parts of the pandemic and the lockdowns. But what we've seen is hospitality, food service, takeaways do really, really well in more recent months. Can't focus about trends without one or two kind of a bit of a focus on kind of habits around online shopping, but also what people are doing in their kind of lives, just to give us a bit more of a well-rounded understanding. And then lastly, around kind of values of businesses, supporting local businesses, but also kind of more global issues around sustainability and environmental issues, which is really, really coming to the fore. I was at a brand new apple vodka distillery just a few miles outside of York yesterday, where they are doing sustainability and environmental commitments on speed, and they'll be sharing their kind of news with you kind of very, very, very shortly. And this kind of ties in with also the fact that COP26 was held in Glasgow in October, and also the Scottish Wholesale Association has been leading the whole decarbonisation and in sustainability issue north of the border, and seems to be doing a fantastic job. So we'll show here how so many consumers, actually across the whole of the UK, do really embrace and want to see a greater commitment around sustainability. If it's only a small intimate group, I think there's 15, 16 of us. So if anyone's got any questions, please don't wait to the end, kind of wave at me or just kind of jump in. That's absolutely fine. As I say, we'll be done in half an hour max, but this is just to give you a flavour of what we've done. Sometimes we forget, sometimes we just need to remind ourselves who we're actually talking to in terms of consumers. This is useful for both hospitality businesses, retail businesses, the wholesalers who support them, but also the brands, the brand owners whose products are being sold through those various outlet types. It's just to remind ourselves at a very high level in terms of who the Scottish consumer is. And as I say, this is the report. What I've done is I've tried to highlight where there are some bigger differences. We have this whole kind of profiling information. We've got plenty and plenty of information here, but we can split by kind of age. You'll see that the Scottish consumers, they have a high propensity, greater numbers of them between 35 and 55. That's where they over-index. We can get into social class, we can get into urbanisation versus rural, we can get into life stage. We've got all of this information which we can provide to you and the Wholesale Association's members as much as you want. As you see at the bottom there, we've tried to give as much information kind of in the bullet points as possible within one slide, but there is plenty more available. Now, this is the first example of where we may have been unfortunate with the timing. This was absolutely true up until the kind of early part of November, up until the 8th of November when we did this research. And this is essentially what we were finding, what we're hearing, was that the UK population, while not wholeheartedly thinking that the worst was behind them, but certainly here, if I glance your eyes towards here, 50% of the UK population saying the worst of the pandemic was behind us. The difference between that and that's disagree, and the 100% is obviously those who haven't quite made their mind up, undecided, and still sat on the fence. People who are happy to have meet people face to face, happy to travel on public transport, happy to go into the place of work. Often this is the bit which gets a lot of the media attention about flexible working. Every study I've seen is that almost as many people want to return to the stability and the normality of a workplace, but often that doesn't often get as much airtime. This doesn't get as much airtime as that. And happy to return into a bed. So it's not obviously 100%. It's not the absolute vast majority, but what we're able to see, and we saw this in the Sunday Times, is that people were across the UK, and these are Scottish figures, were across the UK very, very keen to get back to some sense of normality. I think things like obviously COVID vaccines have done a very good job in kind of creating confidence levels. Who knows what is happening in the last couple of weeks? We are going to try and track that just to see if consumer sentiment has been hit in the same way that the media has been publicising. Obviously, we're very aware that the legislation or the rules around isolation and self-isolation are different north of the border. So we will try and understand it, kind of very much hot off the press. But after saying all of that, this is one of our headlines. This is stated, so we asked people in that 5th to the 8th of November, which type of outlets have you been to in the previous month? And that headline is essentially the summary of that quite extensive piece of work, which is more consumers in Scotland, also actually in England and Wales, more consumers in Scotland said they'd been to a hospitality outlet, and they only have to have gone to one once in the previous month than had gone to a supermarket. And actually, if you see here, the Scottish bars are in blue. Then we will see immediately that the Scots consumers were very, very keen to get back into hospitality outlets. So penetration was very, very, very good in Scotland. And this message has been also replicated in England and in Wales as well. So people were getting back into hospitality outlets in vast numbers. What we also found, and this isn't necessarily the opposite of this, but what we also found is that people were entertaining at home in large numbers. What we had seen is that people were desperate to reconnect with family, friends, loved ones, and some were very happy to do it out, and some were very happy to do it indoors as well. What we also see here, again, in very visually demonstrated in front of us, that the blue bars are bigger than the yellow bars, the blue bars being Scotland. One of the slides I haven't showed you is also the percentage of people who are buying takeaways and fast food, and that paints a very similar picture to what you see on your screen here. Very high numbers of people, and higher in Scotland than we saw than in kind of the whole of the rest of the UK. So what we're seeing, a picture of Scottish consumers wanting to get back out into hospitality businesses, wanting to use takeaways or buy food from takeaways or food on the go outlets, but also entertaining at home. So whether you work in hospitality or small format retail, that does present opportunities for everybody. And it would suggest that consumers are trying to make up for lost time and happy to spend the money that they have making up for lost time. So that's what we've seen. I think this one might be kind of quite relevant now as we're entering kind of a slightly turbulent period of time. These are the percentage of the people at the top here who are saying that they want to kind of continue to entertain friends and family at home. There was quite a lot around watching movies at home. There's quite a lot around watching sport. Sport has become quite a, obviously, it's Sky and various other channels have done quite a good job in kind of sensationalizing sport. There's a lot of those kind of TV shows like I'm a Celeb and Strictly and all those types of shows. That actually creates quite a lot of home entertaining opportunities. What we also see is that what they're looking for is kind of restaurant quality or actual restaurant food for themselves and for their friends and family when they are entertaining at home. So if we are having a slightly turbulent time with hospitality, which obviously we are at the moment, and the number of businesses which are reporting quite a huge dramatic decline in bookings, very short term or very recent, then that does possibly present them with an opportunity. So what we've tried to do is kind of give a little bit of a summary on each slide. Obviously, I'm not going to ask you to read this. You're going to get it within the next 24 hours as well. But what we've tried to do is kind of give a summary and kind of some interpretations on every of the little sections. The savvy shopper. So there's been quite a bit of press reporting around the fact that a lot of people have done very well. That's not to say that everyone has done very well. And even those who have done well, when we're talking about what are you trying to do, consumers, and this is focusing on kind of as you are going out or thinking about going out for meals. We're very much trying to not focus just on hospitality or just focus on retail, really trying to focus on both sides, because consumers do both by and large, or most of them do both, is they're still accustomed to look for the deals or the incentives or anything which can help them manage their costs. That is still the number one reason when thinking of going out to hospitality outlets. What I would say is that you could immediately say, well, is deals and keeping costs down the most important thing? But then if you look at all of the other things in that yellow box just below, just below the top one, healthier options, searching with excellent reviews, child-friendly, actually pet-friendly, featured quite predominantly as well. Lots of people with dogs. And looking for new types of food. They've become more demanding, or they want to try, they want to experiment with more different types of food. So kind of deals and promotions are always going to rank quite highly, but I would also spin it on its head to say just as many, if not more people are looking for things which would be, I would argue, kind of much more about value add, much more about the experience, much more about creating the right environment, making sure that customers have got the right type of food, looking for dishes with food alternatives, plant-based, reasonable size numbers of people there. When you think about, if you take these percentages and turn them actually into, well, how many people does that actually mean? Hundreds of thousands or millions. So you can see that it is price. Price is almost a natural thing, but there's a lot else which is not to do with price. So that's where I think a lot of people, even those who've done really reasonably well, why would I pay more than I have to? Well, I would if you get all the other benefits in line for me as well. Deal hunting is part of grocery shopping. This is what they're saying. They are trying to say this has been quite a consistent trend we've seen, that actually what consumers are doing is, whatever type of consumer you are, by and large, you are looking for kind of deals and incentives, but very, very much more so when it comes to retail. They tend to be more tolerant of premiumization in food service and in hospitality. They are happy to spend a little bit more. They worry less. Whereas when it comes to retail, and there's a couple of stats coming up in a second, which I think are very, very interesting. They are looking for more own label products. They are looking to buy in cheaper stores or cheaper chains. They are using discounters, and they are looking for deals on everyday food and grocery. Slightly more so in retail than we are seeing in food service. And retail, therefore, is a little bit more price driven, a little bit more commodity focused. And as this bottom point here says around here, it isn't just those who are the lower earners or the less affluent. Those who have a bit more disposable income, they are saying exactly the same, not to the same extent, but it isn't alien to them. So this presents marketing. This is how businesses now need to market themselves. They need to think very carefully about their offers and their promotions. Sometimes promotions don't have to be huge discounts. Sometimes just really good communication on better value. But that presents a number of opportunities, stroke challenges for those who are working in local retail. On saying that was the part which are struggling a little bit. Actually, when we said quite clearly, "Are you struggling to make ends meet?" We always worded it in a way which was easier for them to say yes. 42% of the Scottish population said that they weren't. That they are looking to shop in more specialist outlets, more premium outlets, and trying to trade up and to premiumize. So I think from a retailer's point of view, you've got to be optimistic that there is opportunities to encourage people to park with their cash in the same way that they are happy to park with their cash in hospitality outlets. So we need to think about retail kind of in experiential terminology and language, in the same way that we sometimes talk about kind of hospitality and going out for nice meals and having that waitress service. So trading up opportunities does very much still exist. They just have to work quite hard for it. Sometimes we have to really focus on quite stand-out marketing to make sure that the consumers are seeing it, because the average consumer sees something in the region of about 3,500 to 4,000 advertising messages every single day. So it's sometimes hard to stand up. So again, I won't ask you to glance through this, but just to reassure you that when you do have a 10-15 minutes over the next few days, we have tried to give you some kind of thoughts and provocations about what that means, whether what type of business you are working or operating. Now, one of the things which we have also seen, particularly in the early part of the pandemic, so 18 months or so ago, small format retail, convenience stores have done a fantastic job, both operationally, but emotionally. They have connected with communities, they have served their communities. Those communities recognize the work that the local independent retailers have done, and it was an absolutely fantastic success story. It comes as no surprise that some consumers aren't using them quite as much as hospitality has reopened, but the sentiment is still very, very, very much there. And what we're seeing is, and it's slightly busy, but I'll try and talk you through it, is what we ask consumers is, here's some different kind of outlet types or store types that you could have used in the previous 30 days, in the previous months. And this is the percentage of the people who said in Scotland that they'd visited, shopped in a supermarket or a discounter or various different convenience outlets. So you can see there in front of you. What you are seeing in front of you is, again, in almost every case, that the blue bar is slightly longer than the yellow bar being UK, in almost all cases. So you are therefore arguing that Scottish consumers are shopping around more. They're using a greater number of outlets. So you could argue, well, everyone's getting a slice of the pie, everyone's a winner. Or you could argue that maybe consumers are a little bit more promiscuous, that is which we've seen already, that, deals and promotions are driving quite a bit of behaviour. You then might say maybe they're Scottish consumers are less loyal. You could spin it on its head and say, well, maybe they are loyal, but they're loyal to 4 or 5 different outlets rather than just 1 or 2. So there's different ways that you can interpret it. One thing I think which I think we can all agree on, is if you are an operator or if you're a wholesaler supplying any of these outlets, particularly kind of convenience stores, independent convenience stores, or a chain of convenience stores, what this should reassure you is that whatever you are getting from your customers, and you'll know that because you've got your own EPOS and you've got your own transactions, you've got your own spend, you are only getting a reasonably small amount of your consumers' total spend, i.e. whatever they're spending in your stores, they're spending a heck of a lot more in other stores, and they're going to other places as well and spending money there. So this does create opportunities for people to kind of sit back, think of a strategy, which is, how do we untap the fact that they're coming to our businesses, the fact that they're already spending money in our stores is fantastic, but they're not coming to us for other items, or they're not coming to us for other missions, or they're not coming to other categories, or they're not coming to us for other reasons. So it's almost, you've got to kind of think laterally around not what you are getting them for, it's what you're not getting them for, and then how do you target them. Obviously, if you had very good quality EPOS data, that would give you some clues. If you also were able to, one of the things which I think it's easy to say, not easy always to do, but look at some kind of membership or loyalty schemes that you can actually put transactional data to actual human beings, to names and addresses, then that might well give you some clues. But this is the point which I think is kind of an interesting one, is that in Scotland, far more promiscuity, far more different numbers of outlets used. So whatever business you are in, you can get more from your existing customers who are in your stores. But unfortunately, on other days of the week or other times of the day, they're going to lots of other outlets to also buy lots of other items. So exciting in many, 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 many ways. So that's a clear difference in Scotland. The other thing which we've seen, again, I'm going to kind of almost glance, I suggest you just look over here, but specialists, whether it's kind of butchers, bakers, fruit and veg, cheesemongers, that whole kind of specialist premium outlet, very, very, very popular in Scotland, more so in Scotland than you would see in the rest of the UK, and also kind of consistent with what we had hoped to see and were expecting to see, that kind of national pride, supporting local businesses, supporting locally sourced producers. We see it slightly higher in Scotland than we do in the rest of the UK. I've worked with Scottish businesses for 20 years. I feel like I'm half Scottish or 2/3 Scottish. And I know that they've done a fantastic job over the last last 5 or 6 years, particularly. It really ramped it up. This gives confidence that there's still more to go for. Don't drop the baton. Don't think that attitudes towards localness are waning and let's focus on the new fancy schmancy thing. Actually, local is still very, very important. And some of the work which I understand and we talked to Colin about around how local suppliers can collaborate together to work together for an efficient supply chain north of the border makes absolute common sense. Again, on the right, you can break it down by certain age demographics and things like that, and I'd suggest glance that at your own time. Again, just to illustrate that we do have some thoughts and provocations for you, and we again try and make it relevant for whether you're a wholesaler, or whether you're working in a local independent or supporting local independent retailer, or a hospitality or food service business as well. Online habits, obviously, I mean, this is quite a large section. It's kind of interesting stuff. I mean, essentially, some headlines from here. The nation is quite used to using technology, things like QR codes. Sometimes that's driven by the fact that sometimes you need to register a lateral flow test using the QR code, not toad. But also we go into hospitality outlets, and it's increasingly common to order, or at least bring up menus through using QR codes. Augmented reality, things like that. That it seems to be very, very popular, particularly with younger consumers. That has been around for a few years, and talking about this is going to be the year. Well, augmented reality does seem particularly popular. Consumers are really interested in it. They want to see it. The reality is they haven't seen it, and most people haven't seen it. 98% haven't, but many would. But when we kind of focus onto shopping, we've talked around kind of online delivery, or ordering online and home delivery. You've got a whole section on that, which is included in the report. But I just wanted to kind of focus on one or two issues, and that is kind of online ordering for grocery shopping. And I think there's a kind of perception that it is only for bigger main shops, large trolley shops. Well, again, what we found is that the reality is slightly different than the perception. What we've done is we've kind of highlighted here 34% of consumers in Scotland, and not dissimilar in the whole of the UK, are using online shopping, online ordering for smaller basket shops, where of course there's challenges with kind of profitability. However, this probably plays very nicely into local convenience stores' hands, who've done a very, very good job in the last 18 months. So the point being here is that people are increasingly using online ordering for smaller top-up shopping visits, if that's the right word, and it isn't just about the big 80 quid, the big 80 quid shop. Those who live in areas where Amazon Prime exists know that Amazon are becoming quite an interesting competitor or player in this field. From our April-May spring survey, we made the prediction, or did the calculation, that it is not too far-fetched for Amazon to become the 6th biggest grocery retailer in the UK within just a couple of years, just by their customers switching one main grocery shop a month from their main supermarket to Amazon. And if you work out the numbers, slightly back of packet, but if you work out the numbers, you would see that they would then quite easily become the 6th biggest grocery operator in the UK. They're predicted to overtake Tesco as the UK's biggest retailer in 2025. And those who follow Amazon, I'm just about to read my latest book about Amazon, will know that while they're kind of always classified as an online retailer, they don't really see themselves as a retailer. They have no idea what they're actually selling. Everything is in boxes about size, weight, and dimensions. But they generally have no idea what are in the boxes. But they are all about being a data business. And as I've been working for a data company, that is obviously very interesting for us. We wanted to understand why and what it is that people are looking. So when people are ordering food online, what are the things that they are looking for? Well, it's still going to be functioning pretty quick. They've got to pay online quickly and easily. We hear the word personalization all of the time. This obviously applies in food service as well, where people want to personalize their coffees or their burgers or any food. Personalization is such an expectation now. Still, there's businesses out there where it's easier to do transactions on a desktop and not as easy on a smartphone. So that's something to think about. Here, I think quite a big frustration is that people want to order something, and as they're trying to order it, they're then told it's unavailable. So linking up stock and order systems with the website, or stock levels with website, that's something which we do at TWC, working with businesses to make sure that the two systems are working seamlessly together. And we keep on seeing this kind of thing, kind of reviews. You kind of think, oh, blimey, I thought people didn't trust reviews. Well, actually, this is the second or third time we've seen it now, that actually they're very much more trusted than maybe certainly that I had thought. I thought they'd become a little bit passé, but I'm kind of nicely reminded that everyone's opinions are their own, but sometimes we have to go back and speak to consumers and be reminded by what they actually think is important. But you've got some nice examples here. Build up a profile of you over time, so we can start offering you deals. That's linked to personalization. That's linked to kind of clever, history, historical purchases, but also putting people into various buckets. So if I'm the type of person who buy this top with this tie, then other people like me are likely to do it. So just kind of common sense stuff. But again, you'll get this, and you can glance through this as you at your own leisure. So we see why lots of people do like to buy, or what they do want when they want to buy something online, but we also need to understand that there are some barriers as well. And when it comes to food shopping, these are things which I suspect we could all have predicted. We may not necessarily have known that the order that they own or that the percentage is in, but these are the reasons I want to be able to pick up the fresh products ourselves. These two items are probably closely related. I like to browse. And then there's a one point which I think sometimes overlooked. Certainly in kind of local shopping and convenience stores, the average shopper, and this has been true since I used to own H&M, which was in 1997. The average consumer in the UK, admittedly might be different in regions, but the average customer or the average shopper going to a convenience store, 67% of spend comes from households living, or people living 440 yards away from the store. So it's very, very local neighbourhoods. So there is an element of saying, it is literally just down the road. I can go and get it myself. I think younger consumers, certainly those kind of in metropolitan areas, have absolutely no problem ordering a Starbucks coffee and a muffin from the Starbucks 200 yards away from their house. They think there's nothing wrong with that. They think that's perfectly normal, certainly from the younger consumers, perfectly normal behaviour. Why would I do it? So we're going through a very interesting generational shift. Those who are millennial and Gen Zs, funnily enough, and this can work for us in our favour, they really do not understand why anyone goes to supermarkets. Going to something the size of an aircraft hangar, something which even if you only want a few items, you're in there for 40 minutes and become quite understandable. It looks like kind of soulless places. So certainly younger consumers, they see it as the kind of thing that their parents used to do or still do, that is go to supermarkets. Younger consumers are all about wanting to support and shop locally, but also eat and drink locally as well. So independent food services businesses, independent consumer convenience stores should do really very well over the next few years as the younger generations become a disproportionately bigger percentage of the UK population. So all is looking good for independence and local independence, ENTS, and local businesses. The Scots are pretty tech savvy. They're very comfortable with tech. So this is what have you done what have you done in the last month? Scots in blue, and you can see higher watching live streaming. And what we've done here, so if you look at the blue versus the grey, blue is Scotland and the grey is the UK average. Scotland does very, very well. You've got a tech-savvy nation, you've got a population who are very comfortable with it. What we've just done is we've just included in the yellow bar kind of younger consumers who you would naturally expect to be slightly more comfortable and more proficient and higher users of it. That just confirms it. But I think the headline on this slide is kind of the one of your takeouts. Scots are pretty comfortable using technology. As I say, there's tons more in the full report, which you'll be getting shortly. And the last section, which is only 3, 4, 5 slides, is around what we call do good, feel good. This is around how people feel in their local communities towards businesses. There was tons of stuff from our April survey around supporting local businesses, environmental and sustainability. It was around hospitality businesses, not keeping tips for the staff. There's hundreds of issues. Again, if anyone wants any of those reminders from back in April and May. We're very happy to share that. Feel free to either come direct to me or to Colin. But just a few things here. Colin and I, what we wanted to know is around kind of availability and sustainability. So there's not much of a muchness. I'm concerned about environmental sustainability. Not a huge difference between Scotland and the rest of the UK. I wouldn't get too het up about the 23-21% at the top here. I wouldn't get too worried about that. But the key headline is, if you merge those two together, you have a population who are very, very on board and committed and concerned about this whole issue. What does this actually mean going forward? Well, it means that those businesses who are demonstrating, or actually kind of walking the walk or walking the talk, but also demonstrating publicly and through clever and appropriate marketing and communication, should do better. In fact, not only that, when we ask specifically to say those businesses, and this does apply also, this question was all around food retailers, but we've asked it before around hospitality businesses, it's pretty much exactly the same. This is about business who don't take sustainability or environmental issues seriously are likely to lose out in the future. And you don't need to be a rocket scientist or a maths scholar to work out that those figures are vastly greater than those figures. And that is what is going to be a real point of difference and competitive advantage potentially for businesses going forward. This adds further weight to the work which the SWA are trying to do around decarbonisation and for businesses to work together. Obviously, wholesale historically has been very much around kind of larger volume SKUs, kind of top sellers, main sellers. I don't see this as potentially a threat to them. In fact, there could well be opportunities for collaboration between smaller operators and larger operators, or more established brands and smaller emerging brands, to actually collaborate and work together in many areas, supply chain, but also other areas as well. So this is kind of taking a step back and seeing where all businesses can work together. This we put in because we had no idea. I mean, I've worked in convenience stores for 25 years. I had no idea about this as a personal opinion. But the question is, shopping in convenience stores is better for the environment? Agree or disagree, essentially. I kind of broke it into, there's 1/3 who agree, 1/3 who don't agree, and 1/3 here who haven't, simply sat on the fence, who have no opinion. Now, this is not a criticism at all, but I would argue that maybe the convenience store sector hasn't necessarily focused massively on marketing kind of localness and sustainability and environment. So actually, to get kind of 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, to get 1/3 with having done not the hugest amount of work, surely should give us all optimism that with a bit of a concerted focus, a bit of concerted effort, then actually the convenience store sector can benefit quite nicely from consumer sentiment. As I say, most consumers walk to their convenience stores. Most people who work in convenience stores live locally. Most people who work in convenience stores walk to the convenience store. So there's quite a nice little messaging there, if we think about it and package it up. There's quite a nice little message around, we may not be the best, but we're probably doing much better than consumers think, because if at the very least, a third of the UK population have actually no opinion and no idea. So I think there's something quite interesting and an opportunity there. And then finally, because I know TWC, apologies, I should have explained who we are. We are essentially a data business and a digital business and a trends and insight business working in wholesale, route to market, convenience retail and food service. This is sometimes quite a surprising stat. We have heard over the last couple of years businesses who've had data breaches. I think EasyJet are going through one at the moment. BA have had quite a few high-profile ones. There's been banks which have data breaches. And so it'd be very obvious, it'd be very understandable if the whole of the nation Somebody said, I hate data. I hate data collection businesses. I can't trust data collection businesses. They don't do anything for me. In fact, I could be compromised. The fact of the matter is that businesses, that people, consumers are increasingly happy. Yes, admittedly, these are younger ones, but these younger ones are our customers as well, are very happy for businesses to collect data and in return, obviously treat it respectfully and safely. That's kind of a given. But if I'm going to give you my data, I want something in return. And there are this whole kind of programs where groups of consumers are actually getting together and pooling their data, essentially pooling themselves as a group, and saying, you as a brand or as a business or as a food service business, you can target us with deals and offers. We'll give you our data, and data has become a form of currency. So I think local businesses, one of the greatest assets they have is that they should know local, they should know their local demographics, they should know their local people, they should know their customers. How do we formalize the things which they do naturally, which is to know their local customers? How do we formalize that and create? I'm not saying we're necessarily going to create the next club card or the next nectar card, but I'm also saying let's not be too under ambitious and think that we can help businesses think about some of these initiatives. Conversation for another day, I think, but that I think is something which is we need to embrace, that data is hugely powerful, and consumers, and we're pushing against an open door. Consumers say we're kind of comfortable with it, but make sure we get something in return. So it gives us kind of us at TWC a lot of excitement and a lot of optimism for the future, and delighted to be working with many on your data strategies. And just 2021 has obviously been a hard year for everybody, but hopefully, fingers crossed, we can accelerate some of the conversations we've been having and really make wholesale and convenience retail one of the most data savvy in the UK economies. So that's it for me. I said I'd be done by, look at that, I said I'd be done by kind of 9:45. It's 9:46. I think I saw some things popping up, so I'm not sure, Colin. This is our wonderful Sandy, who lives just outside Perth, and that's her contact details. That's not me, in case you're wondering, and it's certainly not me at weekends, just to allay any rumours you have on that. But has anyone got any questions, or shall I have a quick glance at?
Yeah, I think, thanks for that, Tom. I think there is some questions that we'll maybe just quickly run through, and you could tell that it wasn't you in that photo. The cheekbones are far too high. So yeah, John's asking a couple. Obviously, standouts are that discounters and specialists are interesting. I think certainly in Scotland, it's partly, and John, you can come in here if you want, but I think it's partly because discounters have done a good job up here of focusing on Scottish, where maybe there's not such a.
And they have done for a few years, actually. They have done, this is not a new phenomenon. They've been very strong on local Scottish sourcing for a decade, if not longer.
Absolutely, and that's where they've helped create this localness. That the convenience retail that we're helping, the wholesale channel to start and distribute more local produce into convenience and hospitality. That's where we can start and take some of that pie back and differentiate ourselves even more so against the multiples who still haven't quite got it right.
And discounters are meant to be rigid, aren't they? They're meant to be non-flexible, one size fits all.
Yep, but they won't be able to take in necessarily the local products within a true local geographic location. Up in the sort of northeast, it'll be a national a Scottish brand that can be nationally distributed. So it's only conducive to those that can scale up and produce the volume that's required for these discounters. But certainly, what is the gender split surveyed in Scotland? That's our own Mr. Farrell asking that one. Was that in the original slide at the top?
Yeah. Yes, it was. Yes. We spoke to 500 people. We try and make it as nationally representative as we humanly possibly can. but we got 500, which is nice and robust. And what we can also do, talking about gender split, we can also cut the results by those who are men versus women, or those who are older versus younger. Those are kind of social class. You can, as long as the slice doesn't get too small, but you can start. And we're very happy to cut that data for you if someone's going in particular. You know, when you see the result, when you get the deck, and you say, "I'd love to know are the results by women versus men different?" Then send us an email, and we'll obviously cut that and send that back to you.
Yep. Then Thomas at Hovis, how much is affected by drivers and suppliers? Some supplier hauliers prioritising certain outlets. How much does the Scottish geography affect the outlets visited? I don't think really the availability issue and prioritisation really affect factors as relevant to the survey, is it, Tom?
We did ask it in the, if I'm remembering correctly, we did ask it in the kind of April-May survey, and quite large numbers of people had said that this was obviously closer to the 1st of January, where the new Brexit regulations have come in, and so a huge number, like 50% of the UK population, had said that 60%, if I remember correctly, had said that they'd seen gaps on shelves and had experienced supply chain problems. So obviously that has to affect things, but that was April, May.
So it's not as effective in this survey this time round because availability was.
And incidentally, when we come back to doing this again, we are all ears. While we come up with the things which we think are relevant, topical, interesting, we also love to hear from you guys, like in the same way we heard from Colin around sustainability. We will, as long as capacity allows, we will always try and include questions which we think, and also it's right for the survey. We can't have one company kind of hijack a survey for their own personal gain, so to speak. But if it's the right kind of questions, which is relevant, topical, we'll get them in. Don't you worry about that.
Absolutely. Can we open up to the floor? Anyone like to come in? Please just take yourself off mute. Put your video on if you wish. Get any questions or any comments for the future study as well?
I see John Murray wants to talk about Amazon Fresh.
Yeah, I think it's as you stated after I put that comment in, Tom. I think it is a looming threat, and I've actually started reading a book called The Automatic Customer, building a subscription service, and it's really, really interesting because of the model of Amazon, and so yeah, I'd like to hear a little bit more about that if possible, if you've got anything to share.
We can. What we can do is we've got a number of slides in a very small deck, which we can pull together and from Amazon put into a very small deck. And I think some of the reading is fascinating about Amazon. You mentioned about subscription, or the book you're reading, subscription. Those who live near a Pret will know that Pret have launched a 20 quid a month, up to 5 coffees a day subscription service, and it has it has attracted a massive increase, particularly in younger consumers. So we asked back in the March, which was published in March 2021 survey around subscription and local businesses, and something like, the actual figure is not important, it's the approximate figure, something like 30% of people said that they would be happy to do a subscription to a local food service business, like to a local restaurant, and about 25% to some form of kind of convenience store. Now, obviously, you have to be a little bit careful, but it could easily be kind of convenience store, particularly if it's kind of around coffee, and huge numbers of convenience stores offer coffee. But the reason why I think is people were wanting to store up credits. I'm happy to put 20 quid a month into a wine subscription or a different subscription. Why would I not be happy to put 20 quid a month into a local restaurant down the road? I've got close affinity to, and it's just building up points, building up credits. A lot of that was kind of then the sentiment was around, I don't want to see my local restaurants go out of business. I want to support them. I want to help them with cash flow. But I think there's also a little bit of saving for a rainy day. And while it is mad, and by the way, we published this and we thought, oh God, are we gonna look foolish? And so within a couple of weeks, Carrefour in France, on their convenience store estate, launched a subscription business, and it still exists there now. So
I think the concern there, guys, is that they're all multinationals, nationals, and it's going to take out the whole supply chain, the local bit. Do you know what I mean? And what I found interesting so far in the book, same as Brett have just done, though, it's that. But I'm an Amazon Prime customer myself, but it's almost, you feel like you've got to get value for money, so I'll just buy there. Like, yeah. I'm part of that, so I'm going to get my £9.99. I'm going to get value for money, and that's what they're doing with the 20 quid as well with it. So they'll be selling sandwiches and everything and making up their margin on that side and losing the coffee, I guess. But
yeah, and sometimes it's just about the marketing of it. You know, sometimes we can get a little bit too. You know, we sometimes overanalyze something, whereas the reality is, you know, it's just a very simple consumer offer.
I think it's a subscription piece aside, in terms of that Amazon, I agree with everything you're saying, John. It's a huge concern, especially when Tom's saying that they could be the number one by what, 2025, overtaking Tesco.
Yeah. That came from a report about a month ago.
Yeah, I think if we look at the opportunities and everything that's coming through in the survey around sustainability and localness and whatnot, and the opportunities, there is that messaging that actually the local convenience store, retail, hospitality, whatever it is, has a lower carbon footprint than an Amazon Prime vehicle that's coming from a distribution centre that could be 50 miles away. You know, as opposed to a convenience store that's 1 mile, 2 miles. Yeah. And that's a narrative. If we can start and, you know, just shout about localness and the sustainable credentials, yeah. Then that might be a big win against those, you know, huge Goliaths. Yeah. And that's also about why the supply chain, the wholesale, need to become more sustainable, decarbonise, so we can reduce our footprint. So we're selling the story that actually the supply chain behind the bricks and mortar is, you know, as low as it possibly can be. Yeah. Because I think that is going to become more important. It'll be interesting to see in future surveys whether that starts to come through. You know,
and another thing which I would look at, which I'm sure, Colin, you've got it kind of covered, or certainly looking at it. Certainly a few years ago, we did quite a lot of work with it was a single group actually. But while the prices of items charged in the symbol stores are more than in a Tesco, and most people would know that, and most people would accept that, what we also did is spun it on its head a little bit, is the number of people who buy things in supermarket which goes to waste. I mean, WRAP, W-R-A-P, the packaging company, they've been very vocal around the number that, I mean, something like a third of all purchases bought in a supermarket, largely driven by kind of promotions deals, are actually thrown away. Now, this was a couple of years ago, so we need to understand that. So while I know things are going to be slightly more expensive by local convenience store, I'm actually going to buy less. I'm going to spend less money because I'm not going to necessarily be seduced or I'm not going to have that massive, you know, you go in with a shopping list and oh, damn it, you come out having bought 12 items which you weren't going to because it was a very good deal and the dollars were red. You do get a bit of impulse shopping in convenience stores and they do it very, very well, but it's not anywhere to the extent. So you actually end up spending less money and you end up wasting less by shopping locally. And that's a kind of another point which sometimes might be worth, you know, reminding ourselves.
Okay, we're going to end it in a minute or two. Is there any other last questions or comments that anyone would like to make?
Well, I just made it in the chat, but is there a kind of, like a lot of people would say with their kind of heart and head, I would like to buy sustainable, etc. But at what point does price start to kick in? Do you know what I mean? And well, I would like to, but that's just a bit too far. It's a bit like organic. I think that organic probably still has that people would like to buy organic, but wanes away at a certain value.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I don't have, you know, there's not a scientific answer per se of an exact pound, shillings and pence, but the more that we can be doing to deflect attention away from price, the more that we can be focusing on the things which we are good at, the things which we are able to do, the fact that we do have local people serving local people, that we do have local and serving local products from local people to local people. the more that we can have fantastic service, the more that we can have unique ranges, the more that we can, you know, almost possibly become slightly less obsessed about price and promotions. The more that we can deflect about price, the more that we can talk, the more that we talk about other things, the more that we can deflect away from price.
Excellent. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Tom, Tanya, thank you for sharing and actually compiling the report for us. And we look forward to getting it out to each of you and the wider membership later on today or tomorrow. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.